15 days before the 2008 presidential election, with just 2 weeks to go until Election Day in 2008, the McCain-Palin campaign, at that point behind in the polls, unveiled a new line of attack against Barack Obama.
Taking more from a small business or from a small business owner or from a hardworking family and then redistributing that money according to a politician's priorities. There are hints of socialism in there.
Hints of socialism in there. Hints of socialism. If you remember the end of the 2008 presidential campaign at all, you may remember the sometimes sort of rabid crowds at the McCain-Palin rallies yelling all sorts of stuff about Barack Obama, that he was a terrorist or that he was a Muslim.
I'm mad. I'm really mad. And what's going to surprise you, it's not the economy. It's the socialists taking over our country.
Who is the real Barack Obama?
I do not believe in, I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab.
An Arab. That sort of thing was starting to happen at McCain-Palin rallies kind of a lot in the end days of that campaign. But 2 weeks before Election Day, it wasn't just the voices in the crowd. It was the Republican Party's vice presidential nominee in public, on camera, calling Barack Obama a socialist hinter. Right? At the time that this was happening, we theorized on this show about what exactly was going on the Republican side of politics. And in an act of characteristic liberal hubris, we christened sort of a new law of political science. I hereby submit that the longer it's clear that liberals or Democrats are going to win an election, the longer it's clear that liberals or Democrats are winning an argument, the more likely it becomes that someone is going to get called a commie, socialist, Bolshevik, commie, pinko, comrade, five-year planner. Ever since that night in October 2008, that rule has kind of held. I mean, anytime liberals or Democrats are on the winning side of an argument, it is only a matter of time before somebody gets called a commie. Last March, during the height of the Scott Walker union-busting thing up in Wisconsin, most of the public polling showed that the people were, in policy terms, with the Democrats on that issue. They were with keeping union rights and not getting rid of them. And so, right on cue.
Yesterday, I saw signs, Unions for America. So I walked up to him. I said, well, what America do you want to be for? You want to be for the socialist America? Yeah, the socialists have kind of come into Madison and hijacked this union. It's a fact. It's a fact that we have card-carrying socialists and card-carrying communists in Madison, around the state capitol.
Card-carrying communists. I'm telling you, this new law of political science, it holds. And so it was today down in Florida that video surfaced of this particular communist manifesto making its return to American politics today.
What percentage of the American legislature do you think are card-carrying Marxists or national socialists?
That's a good question. I believe there's about 78 to 81 members of the Democrat Party that are members of the Communist Party.
Gasp from the crowd. I want a special shout out to our subtitler for the restraint in not actually writing down gasp. All right, that was Republican Congressman Alan West of Florida being very, very specific about just exactly how many communists there are in the United States Congress. As you heard him say there, I believe there's about 78 to 81 members of the Democrat Party that are members of the Communist Party. That's how he put it. Congressman West wasn't just talking about any old 78 to 81 members of the Democrat Party. He was talking about a very specific group of them. His spokesperson put out a statement after that, not to apologize for it or to walk it back, but rather to tell everybody exactly who Congressman West was talking about. Quote, the congressman was referring to the 76 members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. The Communist Party has publicly referred to the Progressive Caucus as its allies. So Alan West doesn't have a secret scrawled-out list of 76 Democrats in Congress who are commies. It is specifically the Congressional Progressive Caucus. This right here is the Congressional Progressive Caucus website. What kinds of things do these guys do, these accused communists? Well, the thing that the Congressional Progressive Caucus is in the news for these days is the thing that you see front and center right there on their website right now. CPC, Congressional Progressive Caucus, announces budget. Right around the time that the House Republican Paul Ryan budget came out, the Congressional Progressive Caucus came out with its own budget. And while the Paul Ryan budget, the House Republican budget, which essentially mirrors the really, really unpopular Ryan budget from last year, while the Ryan budget, the House Republican budget, is generally seen as more of a liability than an asset for Republicans running for higher office this year because a lot of its ideas are very unpopular, particularly those around Medicare, the Progressive Caucus budget is made up of policies that poll really, really well, that are very popular when you go out and ask real-life humans about them. The progressive budget, for example, calls for ending the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. It calls for letting those tax cuts expire at the end of the year. That idea is wildly popular when you ask Americans about it. 68% of Americans say they are for letting the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans expire. Only 29% of Americans say they are opposed to that. The progressive budget also calls for ending taxpayer subsidies for the oil and gas companies. Again, a whopping majority of Americans say yes to that. 74%. That's a great idea. Let's do it. 74% say yes. In order to deal with our giant deficit, the progressive budget calls for a temporary surcharge on net worth over $10 million. That sort of idea is more popular than a cold drink on a hot day. The proportion of Americans who say they would be in favor of that policy? 81%. But the whopping majority of Americans who actually like that idea, that 81%, actually wants to go even further than what the Progressive Caucus says. They want to see a surtax not on income over $10 million. They want to see a surtax on income over $1 million. So the American public, wildly more progressive than even the Congressional Progressive Caucus on that issue. The progressive budget also calls for something that President Obama has been out campaigning for over the last few days. The adoption of the so-called Buffett rule. You've heard about this, right? Closing the loophole that allows the super rich in this country to pay essentially a mini tax rate if they make their zillions through things like finance and private equity. It's a special mini tax rate just for people who work in finance. When you ask Americans about that, 65% say they support the idea of the Buffett rule. A huge majority supports the Buffett rule. And that's the Progressive Caucus budget. All of these ideas that enjoy really incredible, almost unfathomably high support among the American people when you ask them about these ideas. And so, therefore, right on cue.
I believe there's about 78 to 81 members of the Democrat Party that are members of the Communist Party. It's called the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Commies, pinkos, comrades, five-year planners. You appear to be winning this argument. Communist. The principle at work here is that the longer it is clear that liberals or Democrats are going to win an argument, the more likely it is that somebody is going to get called a communist. For their part, the actual communists, the actual Communist Party USA, came out today and responded to Congressman Allen West, one of the vice chairs of the Communist Party USA, telling NBC News today, quote, "We think it's ridiculous. There are no members of Congress in the Communist Party. That's just not true. We support public parks, and I assume Congressman West does too. That doesn't mean he's a communist." But Allen West, in probably the least shocking development in this entire story, is not backing down. Congressman West writing on his Facebook page tonight, quote, "You can call them socialist, Marxist, communist, or whatever you want. If you are skeptical, just start watching House special order speeches on C-SPAN regularly." So Allen West is directing folks to watch C-SPAN in order to spot the rampant communism in the United States Congress. And C-SPAN, if you think about it, is kind of a collectivist venture. It's kind of nonprofit-ish, set up and designed specifically to benefit everyone in society. It's kind of a little pink itself. Oh, my God, I think that Allen West might be... Oh, my